Okay, yeah, so let's start then. Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Pedro Souza. I'm the Customer Success Manager of cmBuilder. So today we're going to do one of our monthly workshops. Nikan's here with me today to help me with the QA and questions in the chat. So if you guys have any questions, just set it over here. I already see that there are some coming in here, and Daniel will cover this in our session today. So yeah, I will cover that part. And yeah, so let me just jump right into it. And let me cue the music first. It's soothing, but it's distracting. Okay, cool. So yeah, so let's go through the agenda for today. We will talk about coloring methods. So like what are the different ways that you can change the color of your models, right? So then this is one of the things that we're going to talk about. So we have some updates related to the drawing overlay tool, right? Some new features and functionalities in there. I want to highlight today some differences about the different ways that we have to see the tree structures. I've talked about this before a couple times in our workshops, but I've noticed that there are some people that are still missing some specific functionalities here and there. Our excavation tool now has some minor changes in the interface, so I want to make sure that I cover that so people won't be confused when they see some changes on the interface of the software. And later we're going to talk about some tips and tricks, right? So as usual, the recording for this session is going to be available in 24 hours. So you guys are going to all get emails with the recording for that, and you can check the YouTube for our previous workshops. There's a lot of good value over there about how to extract more of the product, right? So use the QA or the chat function over here to ask us questions, and we'll be ready to go through them. Okay. So let's talk first about coloring methods. So coloring methods, I choose to show today like 3 different ways that we can change the colors of our model, right? So the first way that we're going to talk about is the sequencing view. Again, this is a tool that has been there for a couple already for some time in cmBuilder, but I just wanted to touch base on that because it goes along with the tools that the updates that we have to show today, right? So every time that you're creating a sequence in cmBuilder, you're connecting the parts of your model to the milestones, right? So the milestones will define when each one of these parts of your model will show up on your view. So when you're creating the sequence, at the moment of the editing part and the creation part, you're going to work with several models that will be overlapping with one another. For example, over here, I have my architectural model that represents the envelope of this building, and then the structural model that represents the walls and all the other structural parts, right? If I want to see how these parts are connected to this milestone, I can go over here in the bottom right corner. There's a little button, the rainbow button, that is what we call the sequencing viewer. So the sequencing viewer will highlight all parts of imported models to your site so you can see how they are connected to the current milestone, right? So just to make it easy for us to understand this part, I'm going to go into my tree structure over here, and I'm going to take the model that I'm working on, and I'm going to hide everything else. So I'm going to do it in the most manual way over here, which is basically selecting parts that I don't want to see on my view and going into the temporary hide and show, which is basically just hitting H on your keyboard, right? I also want to hide all the other models that I'm not working at the moment. So these two, but as you can see over here, I have parts that are colored in very different ways, right? So all the parts that are colored in yellow are parts that are showing in the future milestone compared to this one. The ones in green are the ones in this milestone, and the ones in blue are the ones in the past milestone. You can choose to hide elements on this view based on how they are colored. So if I click on the future over here, it will deactivate and will hide the parts that are tagged to show as feature parts, right? So if I now move forward, I will see a highlighted part with showing just the parts that are current and the past one. And you can see that also there is a red part over here that's none. So like if I show this model over here, you see that this model is all colored in red because I haven't assigned any milestone, any parts to any milestones in this model. Okay. So what are the advantages of this view? Of course, you can, while you're creating your sequence, you can isolate elements to see, for example, what are the parts that are assigned to this milestone, right? So in a very quick and visual way, you can define, for example, and identify that I have parts over here that are not supposed to belong on this milestone, right? So if I now hold control and select them and do a box selection, you notice that this box selection is only selecting the parts that are in my view, not selecting whatever is hidden by this filter over here, right? So this is a good way for you to assess and like change the location and the correlation of these parts with their current the correct milestone. So for example, if I want to take these parts over here that are in this level, I can go to the next milestone and say all of these guys that I have selected right now, I'm going to right click and say begin from this milestone. So they are now assigned to this milestone. So if I go back, you notice that these parts are not there anymore. Sometimes this wireframe view over here can get in your way to identify parts. So you can click on settings, go into graphics, and turn the show building edges off, right? So this will just remove all the wireframes so you can look at the parts by itself. And of course, if you want to change the background to make the more evident what you're looking at, you can go in settings over here and change the background so you can isolate these parts to the way that you want to see. Okay, so let's fix this other couple elements over here and go to the milestone where they're supposed to show up. And I will right click and do begin from this milestone. Cool. So now I have like all of these parts correctly assigned to their stages. Okay, so this is the sequencing view. And keep in mind that it's always good to refer to the tree structure, because in the tree structure, you can hide all the elements that you don't want to see at this moment. So for example, if I'm working with just the structure and creating the sequence for my structure model, I can turn on the sequencing view. And if I keep the yellow part turned on, I'm going to see all the architectural parts that are representing the envelope, and they're blocking what is going on in the inside of the model, right? But if I turn on the future, I also cannot see what are the future parts of my structure, right? So if I want to see the future parts of my structure, but I don't want to see the architecture, I can simply go over here in my architectural model, right click, temporary hide, and then I can see now a view without the architectural parts blocking what's going on inside of the model. Okay, so this is the sequencing view, and the sequencing view is used mostly to help you define what to help you create the sequence, to assist you at that stage, right? Not for you to present this work to someone or in your presentation view. When you want to do that kind of work, when you're done with your simulation, when you're done creating the parts and connecting the parts of your milestones, that's when we're going to use the presentation visuals. Presentation visuals are a new feature in cmBuilder. We released this probably like 3 or 4 weeks ago. So this is a very interesting tool, because with the presentation visuals, you can assign a specific rule for the parts of your model to highlight them when you're going through your presentation, right? So if I click on any of the slides of my presentation over here, and I hit play from this slide, you see that the parts that are showing up on my view are highlighted in green. And then after they're highlighted in green, they go back to their original color, right? So this is a good way for you to highlight the parts and really understand what is connected to that milestone while you're presenting this to someone, right? So I will show you now how to do that, but I wanted to show you what is the finalized state of the presentation visuals, where right you're creating the highlights of these models as they come to your view, because it's going to be easier for you to identify, especially when you're working with like a model as big as this one, right? So if you're going to go through like your presentation visuals, if I go over here, presentation and markup, and then hit play from this slide, you notice that like the parts that are showing up on my visuals are now being highlighted. So it's very easy for me to identify what's going on that milestone. Okay, so let's learn how to use this tool. And I'm going to use this simple project over here, model over here on the side. Basically, the presentation visuals are assigned to each part individually. So if you click in one single part and right click, you can do an edit model element. And then now you have this little button over here, presentation visuals. So the presentation visuals will allow you to assign a rule to that part specifically. So when I click on new construction, I can now see the preview changes in the viewer. However, I'm not seeing anything change over here because these parts are not assigned to any milestones, right? But if I create like a quick sequence over here and I take these parts, for example, and I assign all of these parts to this milestone over here, foundations finish. I'm ignoring the names of the milestones for now, and I go to the previous one, and then I select these parts, and then I will assign to this, and then I'm going to go to this one, select these parts, and assign to this milestone, and so on and so forth. So now when I do this view and I take all of these parts, edit the model elements, I can assign a presentation view to all of these parts, right? So the presentation view rule that I'm going to assign to these parts are that every time that there is a new construction, I want to see those parts highlighted in green. I can change this to a different color if I want, but for now I'm going to use the default over here. So now that I have this set up, I can turn on my preview changes in viewer. And if I keep going through the milestones in which these parts are going to show up, I'm going to see how they are going to be highlighted in my presentation view. So from here, you can quickly change the colors and like assign something else. So you can have it colored in a different way, right? So you can preview the changes that you're doing by having this turned on, or you can simply play the presentation to see how it's going to work. Cool. So every time that you have a color selector, this is something that some people don't know, and you create, and you add a different color to this, you will have this little X over here that allows you to clear this and revert back to the default state of that color selection. Okay, so now when I hit done, I'm not going to see that those colors applied to this view while I'm doing the work. I'm kind of like still assessing how this suppose should go in the model or in the presentation. But the moment that I hit play on the presentation, that's the moment where I'm going to start seeing the how these parts are highlighted on the presentation view. So where are my parts? Whoops. Oh, did I hide the model? I think I did. Anyways, so this is how you take control about like the visuals of your presentation. Cool. So the presentation visuals are very interesting. You can also show the demolition stages of your models, right? So you can highlight them in red to show like the parts that are being demolished at the moment of your presentation. And I want to now talk about the permanent coloring. So Daniel, this is relates to your question. So when I want to change the color of an object, I can right click on that object, go into edit model elements, and then I can click on color over here to apply a different color to it. But this color, for example, I want it to be transparent. So I can go into the plus button over here and change the transparency of that object, right? So that will allow me to see through that object, right? So now I can see through it and see what the walls inside. Okay, so this is a permanent change to that model specifically. So I'm changing the visuals of this model, and it will be permanent during this scenario. Like whatever I do in this scenario, that's going to be the permanent color for that object. Sometimes you want to create a temporary state of that part. So like, for example, like Daniel mentioned, sometimes you want to show that, but in transparent, right? So what you can do is that you can duplicate this model and isolate the part that you want to show as a temporary state, and then color that part differently so you can have it assigned to a specific range of milestones. I'm going to show you how to do this right now. So basically, the use case that I'm going to demonstrate is, what if I want to take this model and show while I'm doing this, this kind of like staging, what if I want to show that these walls over here, or this whole concrete part, is going to have a formwork stage done to it first, right? So what I can do is I can go into the building and BIM model over here, and then I'm going to take this model and I will duplicate it. So when I duplicate the model, I will have a second version of that model showing up in the same location, right? So that way you will take that second version of the model and assess it the way that you, and create the changes that you want to create. So what I want to do right now is I will isolate this model. And to do that, I'm going to use the new tool that I was supposed to show only over here in the end, the isolate element, but I'm going to do it right now. So if I right click on this model now, and I click on this option, temporary hide everything else, all the other parts and all the other elements other than the terrain will be temporarily hidden, and only what I select will keep the visibility as it is, right? So right now this is a duplication, right? So we're like, there are two models in the same place over here, but on the second model, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna edit that, and I'm gonna take some parts of this model and I will remove those parts. So I'm going to right click to select either over here on my tree structure or over here on my view. I can go and select a bunch of parts, right click, going to edit model element, and then I will remove these parts from my view. So when I do that, the parts that are going to be removed will be highlighted in red. And when I click on update, this will refresh my view. So it will show me now a new session of that scenario with a duplicated model with just the bottom part, okay? So now that this is refreshed, I can see that these are the parts that are left on that from that duplicated model. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take all of these parts. Oh, it's just lasso selection is completed. I'm gonna take all of these parts and I'm gonna change the color of these parts to brown, right? Because what I want to do is I want to use these models to this model to represent the formwork stage. So I'm going to change the name of this model over here and put formwork on the top. And now I have parts that are colored in a way to represent the formwork stage, right? So the formwork stage, I can go ahead and go into the milestones where, like, previous to the one that it shows the concrete over here. And I'm going to take these parts and I will assign these parts to show at this milestone on the previous one, and then also end on that milestone. So now I will do the same thing with the top part. So on the previous milestone to when the concrete is supposed to show up, I'm going to right click, say begin from this milestone, but also end at this milestone because I want them to show only on that stage, right? It might seem complex a little bit right now, but if you practice it, you will understand what I'm doing. Okay, so basically what I'm doing is that I'm showing a part of the model with a specific color to represent formwork, and then that model, those parts will become the original concrete color. And then when the next part will show those parts with a different color, and then they will move on to the next stage where like it shows the concrete. Cool. So why did I do that? Is because I needed to show like a temporary color during a specific stage. So I duplicated the model, isolated the parts that I wanted, colored them in the color that I want, and then assigned them to the milestones to show them in a specific stage. Okay. So if I play my presentation now, for some reason, the presentation is not showing the other models. Oh, it's because they're hitting at that stage, right? So if I hit my presentation now, like we will see the different stages of that model showing up, right? So as you can see over there, like, sorry, there's a camera change in each one of these slides. That's why I cannot see that. So let me remove the camera change from these slides. So we will focus on the other part of the presentation. Okay, cool. So if I play the presentation from this slide, we will see that those elements over there, they're having like different colors showing up. Cool. Okay. Hopefully this was clear for everyone, but if you didn't understand because it's a little bit too complex, you can either like watch the recording or just ask us over here in the chat and we will do that again. Okay. I'll show again how to do it. But basically, the use cases of these three different coloring systems are: the first one, sequencing view, is to help you create the simulation. The second one, presentation visuals, is for you to help you present this and like highlight the elements that are coming in you in each milestone. And the third one is for you either to change the colors of the models that you already have because of X and Y reasons, or you can duplicate it to create temporary states of specific parts. You show formwork, to have like a slab that is transparent, and so on and so forth. Okay, cool. So going on into the next step of our presentation today is to talk about the drawing overlay tool. So this is a recent update that we did on this tool, and I'm very excited about it because I know that the drawing overlay tool is a stage where people like have some challenge, not because of the tool itself, but because of the quality of the references that you have at the moment. You never know what the other drawings that you're going to have. You never know where the satellite images that you're going to have. Every project is different, and every project has different qualities of drawings and so on. But also, the drawings usually represent a state in the future, and the satellite images of usually represent a state in the past, like not usually, but always, will represent a state in the past. So referencing these two elements can be challenging because of the nature of the data that is you're referencing, you're comparing, right? But what we can do is to create better tools for you to do the work faster. Okay, so there's something that I forgot to put it over here. But the main changes are that we have the aligning position and the PDF scale tools inside the drawing overlay tool now. So how did they work? We'll show here on the sandbox project, right? So to show the align and scale, what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna upload a drawing to this other scenario over here that is our sandbox scenario, which is something that's coming soon for like a lot of people. If you want to have a sandbox project in your company account, just let us know. We can take this sandbox, which is a project that already has like models, already has drawings, already has a lot of different things inside of it, and then push it to your account so you can play around with that, right? What is changing soon is that we're gonna make it available for you to do that request from the homepage, right? So yeah. Okay, so coming back to the drawing overlay tool, I'm gonna click on the drawing overlay and I'm going to upload a file. So this file it can be a JPEG, a PNG, or a PDF file. But for now, I'm gonna go ahead and just upload this PDF file over here. So when I select this PDF file, it will show up in your view. In this PDF, you can select which pages you want to bring in and so on and so forth. But when you upload this drawing to your site, it doesn't know where it's supposed to go, right? So you have to connect this with points that you can control from your view. But like originally, the drawing will show up in your view like that. So I'm gonna bring this up just so we can like see the whole drawing in front of us. And what I'm gonna use is the new aligning positioning tool. So this tool is very different from what it was before, and the major difference is that now you have the split screen kind of like mode, where in one side I see the drawing by itself, in another side I see the current state of my site, right? So for you to hide or show elements over here of the existing parts that are already in there, you should do that before you open the drawing overlay tool. Okay, but basically, what is the new stuff in this is that you can choose the order in which you select the points. You can also play with the opacity over here. I prefer to start it with like the opacity turned all the way down, and you can choose what are the points that you're selecting if you want to choose both on the drawing and both on the satellite image, or you can choose one in the drawing, one in the satellite image to make it easier to correlate these parts, right? So what I would do right now is I would take like maybe the middle point of this curve over here, and then I will select the same middle point at this location. But like I'm not really happy with how I located this D1, so I'm gonna move on to the next move it a little bit to the side or something like that, right? Now I can go and zoom out and then zoom on in another location over here and do the same on the other view so I can know exactly which points I'm going to select, right? So if I select this point over here, I can click on this point, and then now if I play with the opacity, I can see if these parts are correctly assigned, right? So I right away I can see that this is not correctly placed, and the reason why can be either I did the selection wrong, or the drawing and the things that I'm referencing on the satellite image, they do not align by themselves, right? They're just showing like not coordinated geometries. So at this stage, you can try your best to like position these elements the way that you can, or just like assess if the drawings are correctly done or not based on like other references. Cool. But basically, this makes it way easier for you to correlate the points that you're selecting on your drawing and the points that you're selecting over here on the satellite image. Okay. Things about this stage that you need to always take care of is you always use the satellite view instead of the map view, because the map view that you show over here in cmBuilder, these are approximations of the locations of the streets, but not they do not represent the actual size of the street. Like if you look at the street over here, for example, the width of it in this schematic view is this one, but if I change it to the satellite view, you can see that the width is way bigger, right? So this is just to give you an example that you should always be referring to satellite pictures over here, because these will give you the most accurate references. Okay. Another thing that you can do as well is to define coordinates, known coordinates for each one of these points, right? So after you select the points both on the drawing and on the map, you can open this map point coordinates. And this is more niche because like not all drawings will have coordinate points defined. But if your drawing has coordinate points that are already predefined, you can go and select, for example, for point M1, what is the geocoordinate system that the coordinates that of that point using this coordinate system over here. Or you can add new coordinate systems to this list on your project page, and then you can like refer to different coordinate systems and assign a specific coordinate and values to each one of these points, so you have like a more accurate placement of where these are. Okay, so a use case for that is that probably if you work with this type of drawings, you can select points on these drawings over here, and then you just add these points to the map, like roughly on the location that they are, and then you just type in the coordinates that you know about the points that are on the drawing. Cool. Another thing about this tool is that you have the ability to lock the scale. So this lock scale over here, actually, what it does is that if you have already defined a scale before, either manually or with the 2-point scale, the moment that you click on lock scale, it means that this action of the aligning positioning won't change the scale of the drawing. It will just like rotate and move. So you can align, for example, if you know like a alignment of a street, you can select points on the curb and then points over here and not really care about the scale, because if you already defined the scale beforehand. Okay. So this is one of the main updates about the drawing overlay tool. And there's another one that I want to show, which is the PDF scale. So whenever you importing PDF drawings, and this only works with PDF drawings because PDF drawings, they already have a predefined size of your page, and that's something that we can kind of like anchor from on top of. So it will only work with PDF, right? So if I go over here and upload a file, and I take this file and which file is it again? I think it's this one. So if I upload a PDF file in here and I select the page that I want, now I have the ability to assign a preset scale to PDF files, PDF drawings. So okay. So like this drawing that I just brought into my view, I can go now into the scale. If I click over here in manual scale, I have the option to define a predefined scale over here, preset. However, if you were working on meters or you're working on feet, you can change the units over here. In this case over here, I'm gonna need to use feet. But let's say that I had my view set up to see everything in meters. This will affect what I'm looking at over here. So like I can see that there are some predefined scales, but I can also click to create a custom one, and then let's just put in like over here the values that I want. But in this case, this drawing, if I'm not mistaken, is on a 1/8 to a 1 foot scale. So I can go into my user settings, change this to foot, and now in the scale, I will have that preset over here. So when I click to add this preset, this drawing now is in the correct scale without me having to do any manual work or anything like that. So if I move this to the right location for where it's supposed to go, you can see that the drawing will align perfectly. So yeah, so you can see that now like the drawing has the correct scale. In this case over here, the drawing is not correctly aligned. I can align like this part of the drawing, but you can see like the rotation of the drawing is what is wrong over here. So this is an extra tip that I'm going to give right now. Every time that you want to move or rotate something according to a specific point, let's say for example this point over here, I need my handles to be located over here so I can rotate according to this point, because if I click on rotate right now, it's not going to rotate according to that point. It's going to rotate to where my handle is. So I'm going to click on user define, and I can click on relocate handles to place my handles at this point. So now if I rotate it, it will rotate according to this location over here. Cool. So you can see that the drawing is now correctly placed. Okay. So this was to show you that you can now assign a preset scale and non-scale to PDF drawings. Cool. Going to the next step, let's review a little bit about tree structures, right? So why I think it's important for us to like talk about this again is because most of you use either the first or the second grouping structure, right? So the one that is by default in cmBuilder that you're gonna see at the moment that you open cmBuilder is this one over here, object type with model tree. So this impacts the most for the imported models. So when I expand this imported model over here, this model is coming from Revit, but at the moment that I keep expanding this, I will see like things organized in a way that it was defined by the source file. You know, like every source file, every source BIM software can organize this in a very proprietary way. So like you never know exactly what you're gonna get when you look at the grouping structure that is the default one. But we show this as a default one because we want you to like review it in the way that the BIM model was created. But like for example in this building over here, if I open BIM model in the first grouping structure, if I open the concrete and I keep expanding, you're gonna see the levels. But if I expand the levels, inside the levels, I'm gonna see a flat list of all the parts that belong in this level, right? However, if I change my grouping structure to see IFC structure, it will mostly impact the BIM models, okay? The same model now have a different organization, and this organization is predefined by their IFC classes. So for example, I can select now just the footings of that model. I can select now just the piles, right? Just the slabs and so on and so forth, the thing that's wall. But this of course depends on how things were defined originally on the source model. So like for a model like this, for example, if I was using the default selection and I wanted to select just let's say the columns on level 5, I would have like a lot of trouble because I would need to expand this and then try to find in here what are the columns. But if I change this grouping structure to IFC and I do the same thing, I go over here in level 5. Now when I open level 5, there is a grouping over here ready for me defined for columns, right? So this IFC structure is really, really helpful whenever you're creating sequences because you can select parts that are in the same group and assign them to milestones quickly. Also, you can temporarily hide parts and so on and so forth, right? This is the one that these two are the ones that people use the most, but the one that I want to really focus today is the third one, which is the start in IFC structure. A lot of times people ask me like, how can I see what are the parts, not just the model parts, but all the parts in my model and on my scenario, they're assigned to a specific milestone. So this is how you do it. You just go into the grouping structure and you activate the start in IFC, and now your tree will show the names of your milestones. And when you select each one of these, you can see all the parts that are assigned to that milestone. You see, even though I'm on milestone 56, I'm selecting milestone 10, I can still see what are the parts that have been they are showing in this view for the first time at milestone 10. If I expand this, I can see which resources are there and which beam models are there. If I expand my resources, I can see the groups of parts that are there. So like, for example, on site mobilization, which usually is the moment that you bring the most resources to your site, you can see the fences that have been assigned to that milestone, the gates, the offices, the water equipment, and so on and so forth. Cool. So this is a great way for you to reassess your sequence and see what parts are assigned to what and so on and so forth. Okay. Also, you're going to notice that there are 3 other groups over here. Non-applicable, basically parts in that are in your tree structure. They're not connected to the milestones in the standard way. Disconnected are the parts that you decided to not include on your sequence, but you don't want to remove from your site. So drawings, imported parts that you don't know if you're going to show in your sequence or not. So for example, if I take these parts over here, added my model element, and I disconnect it from my timeline, they will show up on that group over here, disconnected, okay? And undefined are the parts that you haven't assigned anything yet. Like, so for example, if I select beam model over here, I'm seeing all the surrounding videos that I have imported. And basically what is happening with them is that these parts, they haven't been assigned to any milestone. So when I go into edit model element, they are showing from the beginning to the end, right? So this is just a way to show you that like also there are undefined parts on your sequence. So sometimes this is a good way for you to see what are the parts that are missing that you haven't yet put into your sequence. Cool. I also use this start NIFC structure to do quick kind of like grouping of parts. So for example, in this project over here, if I were to, let's say, get this model and I want to select just the columns because I want to isolate these columns and like do things with those columns and whatnot, I can go into my IFC structure over here, and then I can select type in column. And then I can go and select just the columns of this model. And to quickly remove them or quickly create a group for them, I can go into edit model element and disconnect them from the timeline. So in the IFC start and IFC structure, they will show up on that group, right? Or I can go into the properties and edit this and say, I want to put all of these parts in a very specific level. That is my temporary level or something like that. So I'm going to click to create a temporary level for these parts. And now when I hit done, in my tree structure, I just created a new level for these parts. Let me collapse everything over here. I just created a new structure for these parts that's called temp. See? So this just make rearranging parts in the model. Okay. So
Pedro, there's 2 questions. One
yep.
is what does undefined mean?
Mm-hmm. Undefined means that you have not created you have not assigned that model to any milestone. So like the model is going to be, or the part is going to be showing from the first milestone to the last, until the last one. So like, for example, right now, this structural model over here, if I right click in it and see how all these parts are assigned to milestones, I can see that there are like multiple start dates for this model, right? So none of these models, no part of this model will be on the undefined one. However, if I go over here and select this model and remove the multiple and like remove the definition of how when they're supposed to show up in my view, now they're going to be included on the undefined group.
Thank you. And then there's another question about whether you're going to talk about excavation today.
I will touch base on some updates on the excavation, but if there are some questions related to specific things that are not in the presentation for today, we can talk about them in the end.
Yeah, please add the specific questions to the chat, Enrique. And then there's a third question. Can you reset the groups?
Yeah. So let's say, did I change this one over here? I did, right? Yeah, so like these are the temporary grouping over here. Every time that you do a change on this grouping structure, you can go into the properties over here and select that. And then you click on this X button over here and they will go back to their original levels. Okay, so you see multiple because they are all like spread out in different levels. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, so in cmBuilder, the most of the items that you want to kind of like reset or like go back to the initial state or something like that. Like for example, if I change the color of this part and then I assign them to a milestone or something like that, you see that there is a little X button over here. So when I click on this X button, it will reset that connection to the beginning. And if I click on this X button, it will reset that color to the original one. Cool. Okay, so now going to the next part of our presentation, we're going to talk about excavation interface updates, right? So we have two updates that are the main ones. So the first one that I'm going to show over here is related to how I saw this question pop up today in the chat, in our support chat. So like it's good to talk about this, right? So every time that you create a cut in cmBuilder now, like before, you could define the slopes and like basically everything related to slopes would show up in this view over here. Now what we changed, we added them to the adjust function over here. So like there will be a dedicated menu for each one of these excavation operations for you to change the parameters of that operation, right? So at the moment, the main thing that you're going to find in this adjust function is the slopes, right? So you can see what are the slopes that are the types of slopes that you can assign. So if I open over here a fill instead of a cut, I'm going to also see the slopes for the fill and so on, right? Oh, I didn't select the fill. Yeah, so I can see like if there are slopes assigned for the fill and so on and so forth. So this is one of the changes. So don't be surprised whenever you open this and you cannot change your slopes in this menu, is because they are now in this little button over here. And the other change that we've done to the excavation is that a lot of people ask, like, how can I remove a cut in the future milestone, right? So I added a cut and then I want to remove that cut in the milestone in the future, but I want to keep that cut going on for a specific point in time. Or same thing with a ramp. I added a ramp, then I want to remove that ramp. So one thing about the excavation tool that it follows a different logic than the other elements in cmBuilder, because we are now modeling on top of the terrain. And it also these operations, they are gathered in a quantity takeoff report over here. You can see that earthwork takeoff, right? And for that, you have to put the mindset of what you would do in real life. Like, so if you create a cut in a stage in real life, what you're gonna do to remove that cut later on, you're gonna go and you're gonna create a fill for that, right? So instead of like removing the cut, you will create a backfill stage at some point in the future. Cool. So this is the earthwork. So that's one of the reasons why we cannot simply remove or like assign the milestone or the excavation operations to the milestones like we do with the other parts, because they are like a different kind of like type of objects and elements in cmBuilder, but also it's because we need to uh, compile this into a quantity takeoff report. Okay, so coming back to this one over here, what is the new change? The new change is that now you can move these elements to in between the timelines by selecting them from here, right? So also like a question that a lot of people had is that, for example, if I want to take this field and now put them onto the site establishment milestone, like the way that you would do it before is basically dragging and moving those over here. So you can still do that, but some people don't get that right away. So you can now change the location of this task in the timeline by clicking over here and saying which milestone you want this object to show and what is going to be their location in this list over here. Okay, Nikan, do you have any questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay, cool. So basically, these are the main changes that we've done for the excavation tool. And one of the changes that we are really working really hard, and I know that this affects a lot of people, is just to make sure that these excavations operations are more kind of like easy to understand. More easy, it's a wrong grammatical thing. It's easier to understand, and also the performance and all of that. So we are constantly working on the excavation tool to make the performance work better, to make the tool easy to understand. Not that they have any problem right now. It's just that like we know that these are very complex kind of like modeling tools. So we always have them in mind to make sure that everybody is working well and having good experiences while working with the excavation tool. Okay. So let's jump now into the tips and tricks, right? So some small things that I want to highlight today. So the first one is the volume calculation, right? So volume calculation, basically, if I want to calculate, for example, the concrete all the concrete volumes of this model over here, I can go into my structure model like this guy, and I can type in concrete, right? So when I type in concrete, if that model was brought in with IFC classes and things like that correctly assigned, and the names and whatnot, you will be able to highlight these elements with just by typing in concrete over here. So this mainly will work for Revit models and IFC models. SketchUp models, they're very kind of like weird to work with. So that filter over here won't work right away, but you can select the parts from your view anyways. But basically the idea is that you just need to select a bunch of parts from your 3D model, right click on them, go into edit model elements, click on properties, and then you're going to see a volume calculation over here for all of these parts, right? So everything that is selected and highlighted on my viewer or my tree structure will be considered for this volume calculation. Okay, so if I want to see, for example, just the level 1, I can go ahead and select only the level 1 for this, go into properties, and then I can see the volume of concrete assigned to the concrete parts on level 1. Cool. So this depends a little bit on how the model is organized on the source, but you can for you to do like easy selections like this. But if you want to simply select the parts with the control of the lasso selection or selecting with control, you can still go into edit model element, go into properties, and see the volume over here. Okie dokie. The second thing, I already talked about it, is the isolate element, right? So this is quite interesting because it has been requested by a lot of people. Basically, I want you to see just one single part or like one single selection. So if I have an active selection in cmBuilder of multiple parts or just one part, I can right click and then say temporary hide everything else. So all of the other parts are going to be temporarily hidden, and I'm going to work with just this one at this view, right? Keep in mind that if I keep flipping my milestones, these parts won't come back. The only thing that's going to be hidden or shown by the milestones are the things that are not temporarily hidden. The temporary hide and show, they override the visibility on top of the milestone connection. Okay. And just to revert back, we just need to click on this little eye over here. Or if you have your tree structure open, you can click on this. You can also click here, and you can also click on the reset temporary height for each one of these groups. And if you want to go even further, you can open this and then the temporary height for every one of these objects. Okay. But if I click on this, everything is going to go back, and I will start seeing everything the way that they are assigned to the milestones. Okay, so a very interesting use case of this tool is that, for example, whenever you like working with your drawing and you want to position your drawing according to the background, but you have like a lot of parts of the view, let's say for this project over here that I did that positioning, right? So so if I am working with the positioning tool and I want things to go away from my view over here, I can now like go into my tree structure. And whenever if you select like beam model over here and do right click, this is not actually selecting the beam model. You see that I'm clicking over here, but it's not selecting the beam model. What is being selected is the element that I'm editing at the moment, right? So if I want to hide everything else and keep only the thing that I'm selected at the moment, you can right click and say temporary hide. So all the other parts go away, and then you can switch it back to your satellite view over here and then do the placement using a clean view. Okay, cool. Awesome. Now the next one is an interesting one. So this is more like a niche case, but like if you want to make objects in a go into a path animation like we do with cars, with any type of vehicles, for example, before you could only make that model follow the terrain. So the model was attached to the terrain, right? So if I go here and I want to create, let's say, an animation of a plane flying and it's going to follow this path, I will create a little path over here with my line tool, and you guys can revert back to other workshops to understand this a little bit more in depth. So the moment that I click to create this line and I want to create my plane move flying on top of this, I can go and put in like any vehicle over here, and I like this bad boy over here, the Millennium Falcon. So I want to make this Millennium Falcon go through this path, but I want to make it fly, right? To be detached from the ground. So I'm going to go to my visual programming, and I'm going to put over here the template that we have in our user guide. So if I go into my user guide and type in animate, I will see how to animate resources to follow a path. So when I click on this, over here there is a template to download, and we have like more templates for movements like this towards the bottom. And you can download this template. So I'm going to click over here, move on path, and I will click on download. This is basically just like a file that has like a lot of lines of codes, and then you can take this file and drag it over here or upload by clicking the button. And then when you create an animation, you just need to reconnect that object to the template. So this object, I'm going to reconnect over here, select my Millennium Falcon, and then I'm going to go and select the line that I did over there. So you see, my Millennium Falcon is not flying. Han Solo is very sad about this. And the reason why is because this line is on the ground, right? So if I move this line up now, and I take the line, you see, let me select the line, the correct line. Oops. If I take this line and move it to detach it from the ground, you notice that like my Millennium Falcon is still close to the ground, right? So it's not flying. So now what I need to do is to edit the visual graph, and I just need to turn off this raycast point selection over here. So if you have this turned on, it means that your object will always be following the ground. If I turn it off, it means that that object will be following the 3D line, wherever that 3D line is, right? So let's make it go a little bit faster over here. Han Solo didn't drink coffee that morning. It's very ominous, like it's patrolling the building. Anyways, so this is how you make objects fly in cmBuilder. Cool. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about today in terms of like the main agenda is just that we did a minor update on our chat function, where like now for when you click on the chat function, I'm not sure if this is going to show up for me. Let's see. There you go. There is this little guy over here that's going to greet you. So like if you want to interact with the AI bot that is in there. Basically, what this bot is doing is just searching our user guide for the information using a large language model, right? So if you want to go through that, it might be easy for you to find information and by interacting with the AI bot in here, than just like trying to find it by yourself on the support guide, right? Not that support guide it doesn't it's hard to understand, but like you already inside the platform and you want to just like have a quick interaction to have that solution, right? So whenever we are on our support team working hours, you're going to have these two options: ask the CM bot, because you can just interact with the bot, or you can talk to a human, and like this will just ping our team directly, and our team will jump into the call, into the chat, like right away, right? However, if you're working on our support off hours, the only interaction that you're going to have on the chat is either the bot, or select to wait for someone to answer your question. Okay, so it's just a way to cater for a bigger audience, right? So people that are like in different time zones and so on and so forth, you can have like a better interaction and can have your answers quicker than waiting for the support team to come in. Cool. So
Can you show how to initiate? There's a question about how to bring up the bot. Can you show how to initiate the chat session?
with this guy over here,
Yep.
click on the question mark, and then go into let's chat. Cool. That's how you initiate. Then you can just ask whatever you want over here. How to animate objects. So it will give you like an answer, and like also point you to the support guide page that is focused on that question. Cool. Awesome. Okay. So this is the end of our session today. So wrapping up, we learned about coloring methods, different ways to show different colors in your model in different milestones, or permanently, or while you're doing the work. The new changes on the drawing overlay tool, that expanded in capabilities of it, tree structures, excavation interface, this interface. Interface. Anyways, so excavation interface, and the tips and tricks that are basically the volume calculation, isolation, fly animation, and cmBot. Okay, so the main part of our workshop today is concluded. So if you, whoever doesn't want to hang out for a little while, or doesn't have any questions, you guys are free to jump out if you want. But basically, now we're just going to take some time over here to answer the questions on the QA, and we will follow up with everyone with the recordings on the emails. But again, if you guys have any questions or you need any help with your projects, please contact us on support@cmbuilder.io, or just go over here in the chat and start talking to our little guy, that he's going to point you to the right direction. Cool. So Nikan, let's go for the questions. What do we have?
I think we answered all the questions.
SketchUp models are too sketchy. Yes. Yeah, so there was something related to the excavation.
Yeah, I didn't get a specific answer of what exactly on excavation they wanted to know about, because it's a pretty big feature. We won't get time to cover the whole thing. I was hoping to get a specific answer of specific part of excavation that we could look at within a few
Yeah,
minutes. But
but
other than that, we have like few. We
I can see
have.
that Claudia asked a question about coloring the excavation. So Claudia, related to the excavation colors, let me hide this part over here. So at the moment, we cannot connect them to the milestones like you mentioned, but I just showed for the other for the building itself. But you can change the color of the excavations, right? So if I open this excavation over here, there are two selections for the colors. So the one is the bottom is you can choose to have like any color and like for the sides, like this, right? So you can change those colors, but you can also assign the map color or whatever is projected on top of your map to these faces as well. So like to the bottom, now you see that it's taking the projected like zone and also it's taking the image from the satellite and applying to that. So a workaround for you would be to, if you want to show these elements in different colors, what you can do is you can create a mouse an operation like this one over here, for example, with the color that you want, and in the next milestone you can do like a duplicate of this excavation cut and bring it just a little bit lower, and assign another color. So you're gonna recreate that face with like an offset of like, I know, a millimeter or like a centimeter or something like that. And then from that point onwards, you can color them the way that you want. So similar to what I showed about like duplicating parts for to show the formwork, you would duplicate your excavation operations, but with a little bit of an offset to regenerate the geometry with the color that you want. Okay. Let's see. Anything else from the attendees? I'll start queuing up my Oscar song over here. The Oscars. Let's see how it
Last
goes.
chance. If there's any burning questions, throw them in the chat. Oh, there you go. How do I stop the truck from moving?
You mean like in a these depends on the templates, right? So if I open the animation user guide over here, so let me open this in a new tab. So basically over here in the bottom, you have like a two paths and a two paths in reverse in one shot. So basically these animations at the moment, they have like a very kind of like defined defined kind of like node connections and things like that simply define like what's going to be the path and the type of animation that you're going to have. So choose to stop the truck from moving. The easiest way to do it, if you don't want to interact with the templates or with the visual coding, or with the visual programming, you simply like create an animation and then a milestone, interrupt that object, and in the next milestone, you put a new object that is static at some point, right? But if you want the object to move to a place and then stop, you can use this this template over here. Let me grab that template and apply to a object in this view. So I'm gonna put in like a 3D line over here. And maybe we can add like a new template just for this, like a one-shot animation where the object comes in and then stop, right? So let me put in like this concrete pump truck over here. Right, so if I take that template that I just grabbed, that I just downloaded over here, and I take a look at it, you see like this can be a little bit too complex or something like that. But basically what this is doing is that if you look at the value transition node, it has a trigger, and then when you finish, it goes and triggers something else. So this something else, you can simply delete everything related to this part, and now this object will like just follow one. Oh, I have to reconnect the drawing, the object. So if I reconnect this object over here, you see that it will do a one-shot animation and then it's going to get there and stop. Right. So basically, this is a new template, right? So actually, Nika, I'm going to export this and then we can put in the uh, user guide as a new template.
Nice. one more template in there.
Okay, I'm sending you in the chat right now. Does that answer your question, Daniel? Okay. So bugs related to the excavation, where if you excavate in the same spot multiple times, it would slow the program down or even crash it. Is that fixed? So this is one of the things, Enrique, that I was talking about before, that we are like constantly improving in terms of the performance. This is a very, very complex and technical kind of like problem to solve. That's something that our team is finding the different ways to do that on the browser and things like that. So I expect to have like a this fix like deployed maybe in like 2 or 3 months. I'm not sure yet. Like, so please don't quote me on that. But that's our plan is to have like something like that. In the meantime, what you can do is to every time you duplicate an excavation, you create a little offset, like I mentioned before, like a millimeter or like an inch or something like that, or half an inch, just to prevent it from having coplanar faces. Like that's the coplanar faces is the issue that we are solving at the moment. But every time that you duplicate it, if you offset it by a little bit, it will prevent that issue from happening again. Oh, thank you.
On that note, ready to wrap it?
Yeah, so let's wrap it up. And I thank you everyone for coming here. Would you do a class where you focus just on excavations? Yes, I'll put that on my list over here. The next kind of like themes that I'm planning on talking about are either geolocation or excavation. I'm going to put the excavation now, and also talking more about animation templates and how to do more, like how to interact more with the animations in general. Cool. So if you want to know more about the excavation itself, like there are other workshops that we cover, like a bunch of excavation things. I can okay, we'll put a note over here to follow up that with you. But also like we have like a lot of material on our tutorial videos in our support center to help you with that. Cool. Like there are some excavation kind of like videos over here. Oh, I'm not sharing anymore. But
Thanks for
yeah,
asking, Enrique, though. Do let us know about what you want to hear in these workshops, so we can curate it to what you want to learn the most for the upcoming ones.
cool. So I didn't see any emotions. Come on. I'm a super emotion guy. I'm Latino. I'm from Brazil. Emotions are in my skin. But yeah. Okay, cool. So let's wrap it up over here, guys. And it was a pleasure to have you all. And I'll see you again in a month. Cool. See you then.